You're watching Behind the Headlines. I'm Pacchia. Over the past year, we've seen a dramatic increase in reported incidents of government-sponsored hacking. This has generated a lot of concern amongst members of the United States government and the general public, for that matter. Here to walk us through the specific threats and what people and companies can do to protect themselves, I'm happy to say we have Peter Toren, partner at Weisbrod Matties Copley, an expert in all things related to computer crime. He joins us now from Washington, D.C. Welcome, Peter.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So last month, the New York Times and a private firm called Mandiant broke the story that the Chinese military was behind a couple hacks targeting American corporations and government websites. You've been working with this kind of stuff for a long time. You were a prosecutor with the computer crime division at DOJ in a previous life. How prevalent do you suppose this type of thing is? Is it happening more often, or is it just getting reported more?
I think it's a combination of both. I think it's certainly happening more often. I think it's more targeted for valuable information. I think companies and other countries realize the extent to which they can obtain the valuable information through these illicit means. I think the attacks are becoming much more sophisticated, certainly than when I was at the computer crime section back in the 1990s. So I think the number of attacks are increasing, and the sophistication as well.
Does the government really have any chance at legal redress here, or is this something that it seems like it's a hard thing to bring into the courts?
Certainly where the attacks and where the thefts are, if they're coming from outside the United States, in China, for example, or from Russia, it is very difficult for the remedies to come in the legal system. But that's not to say that the government or that private parties shouldn't do everything they can in this area. As part of the White House's recent initiative that they announced back in February, part of it was a combination of a diplomatic approach, that they were going to really raise the level of cyber attacks and theft of trade secrets to the level that it was going to be part of our trade agreements, and certainly to demand that these countries operate fairly and in ways that are not illegal. So I think the government has to take that approach to raise it to the high levels of the diplomatic thing. But I think also there is approaches that the government needs to do legally in tracking down and trying to prosecute these attackers, whether they can actually bring them to the United States or not. The idea of indicting some of these companies, some of the people who are responsible for it, I think would have somewhat of an effect, and a deterrent effect to reduce the thefts and the cyber attacks. And additionally, it's really up to the companies themselves, who are the victims, to take steps to better protect their trade secrets, their economic information, their vital information, and take steps to do that themselves, and not rely on the government, and work with other companies to really institute best practices in this area.
Peter, flesh that out if you could for us. Why would indictments prevent anyone around the world from hacking?
I think the indictments would send a message, both that the United States has the technological capability to track down computer hackers regardless of where they're located, albeit whether they're in Korea, North Korea, Iran, China, wherever, or even in countries that we don't necessarily consider as unfriendly to us, in Israel or in Western Europe, wherever the attacks may be coming from, the thefts may be coming from, and send a message that we have the technological means to identify who in fact is doing this activity, and that we're taking it seriously enough to indict them, and basically say whether companies that this is where we're going to come after you. We're going to put in place certain trade restrictions on companies or individuals, prevent them from entering in the United States. So it may not really end computer hacking, but I think it really can send a message that we're taking this sort of activity very seriously.
So moving away from the government's response, let's get to best practices here for your clients. When you're talking to them and presenting them with these threats, what on earth do you tell them?
I tell them from a high-level advice, from the 20,000-foot level, so to speak, that they have to be taking steps to change the culture, that they have to institute not only specific steps, but foremost, they have to have a culture in which their employees understand how critical it is for them to protect trade secrets, for them to take simple steps to protect against cybersecurity, or I should say to increase cybersecurity, to make it much more difficult for attackers to gain access of it. Because one of the things that was pointed out in the Mandiant example is a lot of the successful attacks did not come necessarily through brute force of somebody being able to break through the firewalls and things like that, but became that they were able to spot weaknesses in the system, and the weakest point in any system is the human element of it. And unless you can really change the culture and change the human element in any corporate culture, your security program is only going to have a limited degree of effectiveness. So that should be the overall goal. And then there are a variety of steps that one can take on a micro level to really institute and try to change that culture, to make sure that there is a culture of protecting information.
Yeah. Now, Peter, in your time, I'm sure you've seen a lot of clients that do things right, but also a lot of clients that do things wrong. In your time, what's the worst practice that you've seen taken on by a client in it trying to address these issues, or how did they ignore them?
I mean, just on a basic level, you'd be surprised to find out how many companies, how many businesses still don't take seriously the idea of protecting and changing passwords. And I mean, that's something that can and should be done, and it can easily be done to increase protection, is to require employees to change their passwords on a regular basis, not to use their birthday, for example, as a password, not to use the name of their husband as a password. I mean, simple things like that companies, even some sophisticated companies that should know better, just routinely ignore, and it's not creating any greater cost on the company to ensure this, that employees change their passwords regularly, they have hard to crack passwords, things like that. And that also helps create a culture of raising an employee's understanding of the importance of acting in this area. So I think that's probably the easiest liability that can be fixed, and it really still exists out there, and it should not exist in any company at this point in time.
Are you finding that most of your clients are quick on the uptake when it comes to assessing and understanding threats? I mean, just as you were talking there, I was reminded of a lot of high-profile corporate Twitter accounts that have been hacked in recent weeks, Burger King most famous among them. But in the end, it almost turned out to be a net positive for the social media account. There was a little bit of embarrassment, but they ended up with a lot more followers at the end of the exercise than they did before it began. So I would not be surprised if some people in the organization might not necessarily take these issues as seriously as you'd like them to. What are you seeing in that regard?
I think that, unfortunately, many companies or divisions, or however you want to break it down, do not take these issues as seriously as they should until something unfortunate happens to them, whether it's a fairly kind of low-risk type of event, or whether it really causes great damage to the company. But it often, as in many cases, it often takes the companies to have something bad happen to them before they really institute and come in and make all the necessary changes. I think other companies are much more proactive, but I think it's true as in just about any human endeavor that sometimes you need something bad to happen for it to be a wake-up call.
All right. We're going to leave it there for now. Peter Toren from Washington, D.C., thank you so much for your time today, sir.
Thank you very much.
That's Peter Toren, partner at law firm Weisbrod Matties. If you'd like to learn more about the cases and issues we just discussed, be sure to go check out our offerings on BloombergLaw.com and also on the Bloomberg Terminal. You can see more of our videos on YouTube, and you can follow our updates on Twitter. I'm Pacchia. Thanks for watching.